Good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Hightop Sports. It's never a dull moment, like we like to say here when it comes to the Florida Gators football. And now we have ourselves a situation where Jaden Rasahada, former Florida Gator commit, four-star quarterback who has recently committed to the Georgia Bulldogs, is now suing Billy Napier, head coach of Florida Gators, Hugh Hathcock, once associated with the Gators booster. I think he's still a booster, but had a collective that is no longer active. And Marcus Castro Walker, who was a part of the Florida Gator coaching staff, that is no longer a part of that staff, which we'll get into in just a moment. And this news dropped today. Kind of just a quick little timeline of what happened, how this thing unfolded. Signed with Florida 2 years ago on National Signing Day. That fell apart very quickly after the signing of that national letter of intent. Asked to be released from that intent. Was apparently promised a $13.5 million deal. When all of this came out, the biggest question mark and head scratcher was, why is a kid being paid $13 million? Like, right, that was insane for 4 years. And obviously it all fell apart. For what reason? There was multiple stories that came out that it was never supposed to be 13.5. There was an error on the sign, on the agreement. When the collective, which is no longer together as well, the Gator Collective, when they saw the contract, that's when things kind of went awry. They're like, something's not right here. Something isn't added up. There was talk, again, everything what's being stated now and what's in this lawsuit is not what was told 2 years ago. There was a situation where a particular lawyer was supposed to be getting paid more. They're no longer associated with Florida. There's so many moving pieces, so many moving parts, that this is coming from the lawsuit, in my opinion, is taking a different angle than what was originally spoke about early on. The one thing that is consistent throughout this entire process is the money that is involved with this deal, which is $13.5 million, and that Jaden Rasahada did not receive $13.5 million, and that's where all of this stems from. So, like we just mentioned, though, who is being sued? It's Billy Napier, Hugh Hathcock, and Marcus Castro. Both the two on the right, Marcus and Hugh, essentially no longer associated with the Florida football program in the sense that like they were 2 years ago. Billy Napier obviously still is the head coach, and that's where we dive into this. We've got some verbiage, and we've got what was written down, the documents. So we're going to read through those. I'm going to give you my thoughts. There's some big lawyer words, some terminology. I'm not a lawyer by any stretch. However, I did stay at Holiday Inn, and I watched 7 seasons of Suits. So I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I would say I'm well versed. Probably not. Probably going to butcher this, but it's interesting. We got to talk about it. So what is Rasahada suing for? He is suing on counts of fraudulent misrepresentation. What does that mean? In dumb man terms, basically, for ourselves, is a tort claim that occurs when a defendant, which is Rasahada, which is Billy Napier, Hugh, and the other guy, intentionally or recklessly misrepresent a fact or opinion or coerce a party into action or inaction. So this is where this whole thing is going to stem from, is that Rasahada is claiming that Napier and these guys persuaded him to leave Miami for the potential to make 13.5 and then bailed out of it when it was too late to go back, and the damage was, and the relationship was already ruined with Miami. The next thing they're being sued for is fraudulent inducement. So that occurs when someone uses false information or misrepresentation to convince another party to sign an agreement to their disadvantage. So kind of a lot of these things are going to be very similar and in line with one another. So just keep that in mind. Aiding and abetting fraud, that means when someone knowingly helps, encourage, or allows another person to commit fraud. I think this is where the Billy Napier factor comes into play. We'll get into that in a moment because of what Billy's being claimed of. It's a lot of he said, she said, which we'll dive into. But this, in my opinion, is where the Billy falls into. He probably could fall into all if they wanted to, but this is, I think, the biggest claim for Billy, is what they're trying to. Civil conspiracy to commit fraud. It's how it sounds. Basically, people agreeing to do something unlawful that harms a third party, or conspiracy to have a conspiracy that occurs when two or more people get together. So basically, claiming that Billy and Hugh got together and like, hey, this is what we're gonna do. Got a big idea. Okay, you're gonna go to this kid. You're gonna tell him that I'm gonna give him $1 million. You're going to offer him 13.5 because I know Miami's offered him 9.5, and John Ruiz and LifeWallet doesn't got it because they're going under. But we're going to tell him this. Once he signs, we're going to screw this 17-year-old over. That's the goal here. That's the plan of action. That's what they're claiming here. And then negligent misrepresentation, tortious interference, all of that kind of just recaps what we just went over. And then it goes into defendants' goals were to twofold. One, to ensure Jaden remained committed to UF, and two, to avoid paying the promise in NIL funds, the complaint states. So the goal, essentially, for Florida was to make sure that he stayed committed to Florida so he didn't flip back to Miami or go anywhere else. And then for Florida not to end up paying the NIL deal, which is weird. Also to keep in mind that I don't think I notate in this file that the agreement between both parties allowed for either party to walk away at any time. Something interesting to keep in mind there as we move forward in this. It also says defendants knew that for most college athletes, the prospect of NIL earnings is life-changing. Defendants exploited this fact for their own personal advantage. Again, saying that Napier and staff knew that this was an opportunity to persuade him and lure him in because it was such a life-changing opportunity that here's where we're at. So there's going to be a lot to unpack here in this video. I don't know how long it's going to go because we're going to be going through all of this. Obviously, people are going to take this and run with it because how this entire lawsuit is being pivoted and looked at is that, again, that Billy Napier and these guys persuaded and tricked this young man to commit to Florida. Also, he would not end up committing to Miami, burn that relationship, which, again, Miami was offering him a 9.5. That is in the contract, which is still a crazy deal. And that Florida, again, persuaded him to come over so he would no longer pursue that. And then he ended up basically being left out to dry because Florida didn't sign him. Then he goes to Arizona State, which he claims didn't receive any type of benefits or lucrative deals to go to Arizona State, which is interesting. There's a lot more things we got to break out. This one's crazy one to me. Over the course of an official visit to Florida in early June 2022, Hathcock, which again has no correlation to Florida football in the sense that he works for them outside of him just being a guy that was a big fan of Florida, created a booster, created the Gator Guard, which was his own collective, which is very reasonable. You see all these schools doing it now. It was the Wild Wild West when this happened. There still is no rules to all this. Hathcock told Rasahada he could make whatever he needed to be done for him to land with the Gators, according to the lawsuit. According to the complaint, the booster also suggested he could secure employment for Jaden Rasahada's father, Harlan Rasahada. This has nothing to do with Billy. Just so we're clear here. If that were the case, that's like, this is wild to me. Like, even if that is a factor, like this guy in Hathcock, Hugh Hathcock, wasn't employed by Florida. So you're taking the word of a guy, which is, it is what it is. Also, proving this is going to be very difficult. And I'm not saying that it didn't happen or it did happen, whatever, but like, if you're just thinking about what happened, it's like, yeah, he told me I was going to get a job. What? No, I didn't. Okay, never mind. Just kidding. Like, that's where this is. Again, all this, usually if you're going to file this lawsuit, there'd be text and these things to back this. None of that's in the lawsuit. Just keep that in mind. After his commit to Miami, the court doc says Hathcock offered Jaden an approximately $11 million UF-affiliated NIL deal that would have run through the boosters, Velocity Automotive, and his NIL collective, the Gator Guard. Two things here. The Gator Guard no longer exists. The Gator Guard also was not connected to the collective, which went away because of all this, and it now is known as the Florida Victorious, which is a whole new entity by itself. Velocity Automotive is no longer owned by Hugh Hathcock. They are also suing Velocity Automotive and then being Jaden Rasahada. So if they're suing Velocity in the hopes that, I don't know, I guess Velocity, who's now owned by another party, maybe just signs a deal and just says, be done with this because the name's on there. But Hugh has no relation to any of this. All these things are closed. And I don't know how this would work with Velocity because, again, they're suing them, but he has no association with them anymore. So, interesting point. Negotiations between Hathcock, Castro Walker, and Rasahada representation started shortly after, according to the lawsuit, as a part of a $13.85 million contract eventually agreed upon. Hathcock would pay $5.35 million, including a $500,000 signing bonus through Hathcock's company, Velocity Automotive, court documents state. As of now, here's where I stand with this. It's the same thing with John Ruiz, because John Ruiz is kind of went away because of what happened with Miami. He was extremely involved, and I don't think he's involved anymore because of his company, all of these things. And we talked about this 2 years ago, when all this rolled out. These guys were basically just saying that, hey, I'm going to sponsor you through Velocity Automotive. Like, that was the loophole that was happening. So these guys that are big time boosters that were connected with the school, it's like, hey, I know how to get around this thing. That's what was happening. As of now, in my opinion, my thoughts on this, the University of Florida and Napier have nothing on this. They can't really hold it. And the guys, Hugh Hathcock and these guys, it's all he said, she said. He promised this, and I didn't get this. I don't know how we probably won't see what facts will be delivered, but that's kind of where this is at. But Hathcock, Castro Walker, and Coach Napier all knew something that Jaden did not. No one had the intention of enforcing Hathcock's promise to pay $500,000. That's where the conspiracy comes in, right? They're stating that Hathcock, Castro, and Napier all got together and were like, we're never paying this kid. But there's no proof. That is just their feeling. As of now, there's no proof. So just keep all these things in mind. I'm trying to have like a level headed to all this. And then I'll give you kind of my thoughts at the end of it. Because I know how some people, I'm already being tagged by Jason Hall of Fame and his dumbass about, this is disgusting. You don't even read it. You're reading it from one side. This is all from one side. Nobody else has said anything else from the other side. Like, let's just take it one step at a time here. According to the lawsuit, the 4 defendants defrauded the quarterback by falsely promising the $13 million contract when knowing the agreement would not be fulfilled, and neither they nor Hathcock had any intention of fulfilling it. Again, how do you prove this? I don't know. We will see. The complaint also cites false statements that were allegedly made to Rasahada, including $1 million payout he would receive for signing the national letter of intent. And this is where things get interesting. Again, it's a he said, she said. Among the accounts against the defendant are aiding and abetting fraud. For the fraud to be executed, the complaint argues Castro, Walker, Hathcock, and Napier were substantially and knowingly assisted by one another. There's also a part of this lawsuit that states that Billy Napier made the promise that, hey, once you sign on National Signing Day, I will make sure that Hathcock wires you $1 million. Again, there is no proof. There's no text message. It's all he said, she said. And I'm not saying that it did or didn't happen, because I know where both sides are going to come at it. There is a side that already believes that Billy's guilty. There is a side that believes that it's just this kid trying to just get a last-minute bag. And there's the rest of us that are having a reasonable mindset of just trying to understand what's going on here and how all this thing's going to play out. And is it football season yet, right? So that's kind of what I'm trying to have the mindset here. From a lawsuit perspective, from my experience in law, for my 7th season of suits, you can't just go up there and be like, well, he did this. Like, all right, well, can you show me when he did it? No, but he did. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. So I'm not saying that, again, none of it happened, but there's no text messages proving any of this. Now, the part where the people are kind of upset that these kids are being screwed by all of this, what is ironic in this, I'm not saying that kids aren't being screwed and that this is a dangerous game and it is his business and it's nasty. The part of where we've heard multiple players where they'll take a bag, which is illegal, but we promised them, which Fred Taylor played for the Florida Gators, said that he was given $50,000 by Georgia and still committed to us. That's the same thing. They're stealing. They're going back on a promise. This has been the tale of oldest times of both parties taking one to give to the other. That's just the way of the land. This is just an insane amount of money. And so that's probably where a lot of this frustration is coming from. And I think his dad's pissed he probably didn't get a job either. The last little bit here that I have, and then my favorite tweet that I saw today, defendants specifically intended to end Jaden's agreement and business relationship with Miami for their own personal benefit and to Jaden's detriment, the filing states. So like I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the show, this all stems from, I think the claim that they're stating is that they never had intentions to sign Jaden Rasahada. This was all a ploy. This was a petty move because they were mad that Miami at the time had took a lot of recruits from Florida, which they had. I mean, let's keep it a buck. They did. They were taking anybody in the land, and anybody that we wanted to get, they were getting them. And so it looked like we're like, you know what? We're going to prove a point, and we're going to take out our anger out on this one particular kid being Jaden Rasahada. Mind you, with the fact that Jaden Rasahada did not sign it, Florida went through that class without a quarterback. I don't think that Billy would just go in his second year and completely destroy his entire recruiting class and potential future at Florida just to get back at Mario Cristobal in Miami. That's where we're at, right? I could be crazy, but I just don't think that Billy got that upset that Rasahada was his target. I don't know. Billy, here's the meme though. Billy walking out the courtroom and Rasahada family is broke after begging for money every couple of months. like whatever it is, it was good. It's gonna offend some people, but it was funny, and I enjoy a good joke. Again, this thing's gonna be probably a little bit ugly. It sucks. I'm kind of glad it's happening now. It'll get us through the off season, I guess. It'll be definitely a topic of discussion that we talk about tomorrow with Dave both Dave Water and Solder. I'll get their thoughts and opinions. I'm sure we'll get some more info and some more knowledge. Maybe we'll have a presser. Maybe we'll have some talks from there's been no communication from Napier, Hathcock, and Walker as of now. So like I said, this is from a one-side perspective. This is from the Rasahada camp. They put together a lawsuit, and that's what they filed. This is what their claims are. So you have to keep that in mind, that here's all the claims. Now we have to go back and do the work for it. Remember, Florida was being sued or being investigated, due to all of this. The Rasahada kind of sparked this investigation with the NIL and how it was working, but all of that's been suspended because the rules that were in place are not in place, or was there really any rules? There really isn't anything to follow. So they're not, you could see this lawsuit isn't coming from like, hey, they broke this rule, they broke that rule, they broke this rule. No. They just hurt us. They lied to us. They manipulated me, which again, if you're unable to prove that, they're not claiming that any laws were broken or that any rules were overdone. And some of these things, by them agreeing to an NIL deal prior to signing, technically would be breaking the laws, but there is no law. So there's so many moving parts to this. It's going to be interesting to follow. The haters, and also fun fact, Kirby Smart was asked about it, and Kirby gave his blessing to pursue this lawsuit, which I find funny. It's good stuff. So look, people are going to try to attack this and be like, oh, this is kid's getting screwed. You're a piece of shit. Look, I'm not here to get anybody screwed over. If Rasahada's due his money, pay the kid his money. Like $13 million, like, it's a lot of money, but for these guys, these boosters that are all throwing this thing around, like, somebody has it. If they felt that, hey, yeah, we're guilty, we owe you this money, we'll figure that out. But I also can assure you, these guys been in this business for, a lot of these guys that were involved with it, been in this world for a very long time and maneuvered it probably a way smarter than probably people most people probably realize, is what I'm getting at. So what will this come out to? Maybe a small settlement outside of court that we don't hear about. What has to happen, in my opinion, for the Florida football is you get ahead of it, you silence it, and you handle it behind the scenes as quickly as possible, because you don't want this thing rolling into the summer or to the football season. If I was Kirby, I'm like, hey, can you wait till like August 1st, like August 30th to drop this bombshell? If you really wanted to send a hammer through. But that's my thought. But now we've got all summer to talk about this and figure this thing out. I know you're going to have your thoughts and opinions about it. I don't even need to tell you to roast me in the comments. Go ahead and knock yourself out. If anything else happens and more drops, this is off the dome quick. I'm going to do some more digging, some more reading, and all these things to figure out what's really unfolding here. But ultimately, there's not much proof to all these claims. And so I don't know how far they're going to get with a lot of these things and how much people are going to be on the hook for these things. But that's as of now. That doesn't mean things can't come out. I'm just saying, as of now, this is where we stand. We'll see. Smash the like button, subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. Peace and love, baby.